everybody. Thank you for joining us on Authors on the Air. I'm your guest host, Deborah Ledford, and I'm honored to feature David Heska Wanbli Weiden on the program today. Say hello to the folks, David.
Hey, it's great to be here. Hey, everyone, and thank you for having me.
Oh, I am just so stoked to talk to you. My episodes for Authors on the Air primarily focus on Native American and Indigenous authors. And since November is American Indian Heritage Month, I'm thrilled that you can join us to talk about your amazing winter counts. Oh my gosh. So to prepare for this program, I reread this now. So I've read this 3 times now. Look at all my tabs. I absolutely adore this book. Virgil is my hero. I know we're probably not supposed to really make him a hero, but he really is in so many ways. Winter Counts won a slew of awards for your debut, and it's your debut thriller, the Edgar Award, Hammett Prize, International Thriller Award, deserved praise, absolutely for sure. So just to start off, could you give us a little bit about the book and the lead character, Virgil Wounded Horse?
Sure. So Winter Counts is set on the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Sichangu Lakota Nation, and we are located in South Central South Dakota. And Virgil Wounded Horse is a hired enforcer on the Rosebud Reservation. And he's an enforcer because, without getting too deeply into it here, the U.S. government is really not holding up to its duty to prosecute felony crimes that occur on reservations. So we have about 50% of child abusers, rapists, murderers that are literally set free. And so often when an injustice has been done, a child has been hurt or something like that, people want some vengeance. They want some justice. And so they would hire my fictional character, Virgil Wounded Horse, to go out and lay down a beating on someone that had done a bad thing. And his price is $100 for each tooth he knocks out and $100 for each bone he breaks. So it is his story, but hopefully it's much more than just a tale of vengeance and hired vigilantes. It's also a story of identity, what it means to be Native American today in the 21st century. And it also brings in, I hope, a lot of issues that I think folks who are not Native may not know about. And I'm really thrilled to share that the book has had a very positive real world effect. The book spurred, when it was released 4 years ago, in that time, a national discussion about the Major Crimes Act and criminal justice enforcement on reservations. And I can tell you there's been a lawsuit that's been filed by the Pine Ridge Reservation against the U.S. government. And about 2 years after the book was published, the FBI beefed up enforcement on many reservations. And again, I'm not saying that my book was the sole driver of all this, but I think the book and the impact it had did help create a dialogue. I also published an essay on this in the New York Times. And so it's really gratifying not just to entertain people, but hopefully to actually have my art do a little bit of good in the world.
Right. And it did. It fired so many things. And I mean, blessings to you, my friend, because it was about time to shine some spotlight because, and you're not shy to go out there and talk about it. And it has, your, not only your work in really bringing a lot of these matters to light, but also, true world experiences. Wow. So thank you for that. So let's go back just a little bit. So Winter Counts reads very much like a classic PI novel. Was that your intent while coming up with your initial ideas for the book?
So my initial idea on the book was to create a true noir story. And indeed, the book first started as a short story. I've shared this before in other interviews. And in the short story, also called Winter Counts, that I published in Yellow Medicine Review about a decade ago, the character, Virgil Wounded Horse, dies at the end because in a true noir story, you usually want, there are more tragedies and you want your character to come to a bad end. And so I did have him die in the short story. He's a lot rougher in the short story. Yeah. But then it continued to, he percolated in my mind, this character. And I just kept thinking about him. And about 4 years after that, I said, maybe there's something here. Let's see if we can flesh this out into a book. So I changed it from a crime noir tale, that subgenre, to a thriller. Yes, it is a PI in some ways, but he's not really a hired private investigator. He's different. He's a vigilante. He's someone who goes out and will hurt people for a living. Now, he may do other favors. He may locate people and such, but that's not really his main focus. So I would say it's adjacent to PI or private investigator fiction, but not completely in there. So I know these are really fine distinctions that matter a lot in the crime fiction world, but outside of that, not so much.
Right. A good story is what it's all about, right? So Winter Counts has a special meaning to the Lakota people. What does that mean, and how did you decide to implement that in the novel?
Sure. The title Winter Counts refers to the calendar system of the Lakota people, which is called a winter count, or in the plural, winter counts. And, before colonization, Lakota people would keep track of the years by using little pictographs on a buffalo hide or whatever they happen to have handy, and they would use little drawings to indicate the most significant event of the year. And so they would, draw these things, and that would be known as, the year that the buffalo ran away or something like that. And so Winter Counts, then I adopted this. Now, obviously today we use regular, standard Western, European calendars, Gregorian, but I always loved this tradition. And so I made it the title of the book, because obviously there's a double meaning, because in South Dakota, it's quite cold, and winter there is obviously exceptionally brutal. And we do have people die every year if they cannot afford their propane bill. A lot of houses up there, in fact, most do not have, central heating. And you have to rely upon either firewood or getting $125 canister of propane shipped in. And we do have people freeze to death. So winter is very brutal. I should say this is outrageous that in the USA we have people freezing to death because they can't afford $100 tank of propane, but that's another issue. So I really liked the title, and I had to fight for it with my press because they didn't care for it. But I dug my heels in on this one, and I said, this is the right title. Okay, it has a lot of resonance. So I think they finally came around to my way of thinking.
Oh, I think it's brilliant because, especially given what it actually means, the one description to the Lakota people themselves. I mean, come on, let's stick with tradition, right? This is a Native American tale about a Native American character. And then, Marie Shortbear is Virgil's foil in many ways. And thank you for making your sidekick a Native woman. She's real and heartfelt, and she keeps Virgil grounded. So kudos for that. And how, I'm not going to say, how did you come up with Marie, but what did you feel was the most important task for her to kind of reel Virgil in?
Yeah, so Marie Shortbear in the book is Virgil's ex-girlfriend, and it's a little bit of a spoiler alert here, but not too big of a one. They do end up rekindling their romance over the course of the book. And I really struggled with the character of Marie because in early drafts of the book, she didn't feel fully fleshed out. She felt a little one-dimensional. And I didn't want her just to be, Virgil's foil without having her own story and her own arc. And so I really gave a lot of thought to, what would a modern woman today on the Rosebud Reservation, and she's of mixed heritage in that she's some Lakota and some of another nation. And so this presents a whole other issue for her. And she has parents who are fairly wealthy for the reservation, but she herself is a Lakota traditionalist. And so there are a lot of contradictions and such. And like she was accepted to Dartmouth College, but she chose to stay fictionally and attend the tribal college, which very much exists on her reservation. So I really had to work with her, and I'm really pleased, that I spent that time because I love her, and I'm so honored. Literally, just last week, somebody that I don't know published an article in the online magazine Crime Reads, analyzing the female characters in Winter Counts, not just Marie, but
Wow.
2 others, and said that I use them as a way, to really explore feminine characters in different ways. And I was really honored because I've done a fair amount of commentary on the book, but to my knowledge, this is the first time anybody has taken a look at my female characters and really analyzed them. So thank you for asking that, because I do love her as a character.
I do love her too. Who wrote that article?
I'm going to mispronounce the name, so I don't want to say it. I will say that it's it's on my website, davidweiden.com.
Oh, that's great.
And if you go to Crime Reads, which by the way is just if folks out there listening do not know this site, crimereads.com is just an absolutely wonderful resource for people who love crime fiction. It's fantastic. It's my go-to, every other day or every day. So the article is easily findable.
Yeah, and it's great for writers and readers alike. Readers looking for new books that by writers they've never heard before. It's fantastic. Now, you touch on traditions and ceremonies like the Uwipi ceremony. How did you decide what to present and what to hold back? I know for me even, that's a huge issue in Havoc, is like, how much should I tell? Yeah.
So for those who haven't read Winter Counts, there are a couple of Lakota ceremonies in the book, spiritual ceremonies, traditions. And that's what we're talking about here. And this was absolutely the most fraught part of writing the book for me, because for those who are not Native and listening in, there are certain aspects of what we do that are private. And so there are certain things that I would not write about. And so, but on the other hand, I felt it was important, again, without giving away too much, Virgil he rejects Lakota culture, identity, spirituality, but he comes to embrace it as a way to heal himself and his community. And so I felt it was important to bring in our religion and our spirituality. Plus, I'm proud of our religion and spirituality. I love it. I think we have a wonderful belief system, and I'm not ashamed of it. I wanted to expose people to it, but there is that line that there's certain things that we should not write about. So what I did is I went to really respected Native American thinkers, Vine Deloria Jr., who is probably the #1 most esteemed, he's passed on, in Native intellectual that ever has been. And he wrote some books on Native spirituality. And I took a look at what he had written. And then I read some books by some of our Lakota medicine men, and I saw how much they had revealed. And I looked at 5, 10, 15 books on this. And I went no further than what they did. So in other words, what they had previously revealed, I felt was probably fair game. And even then I pulled it back some. And so, it was definitely a question that I took very, very seriously, but I feel good about it because I think it was important to the story. And I think I exposed my readers to some of our spirituality, which I think is necessary in these days, because, we don't have the same religious tradition as Judeo-Christianity. So I did want to show, a different perspective.
Yeah. And I think you open that door, to just enough. I mean, to make people even more fascinated. And I was like, oh, this is like, okay, this is what sets off Native Americans from a traditional, Christian or whatever society. It's because it's about the spirituality, and it's and that's, and nature and the things that are actually important, right?
And I should point out, I'm sorry to jump in. I just, before we move on to the next question, I just wanted to say for people listening in the book, there is an afterword, and I give lots and lots of resources for people who want to read more on the criminal justice aspect, as well as Native spirituality and traditions. I give lots and lots of books that folks can turn to. Just wanted to get that in there quickly.
Right. I mean, your research is immense, and there's a lot. There's a lot that can be, sought out on your own, that you provide, and that list is really, really fascinating. So we mentioned before, you touched on, Winter Counts features suicide and drug use and overdose and poverty, all of the unfortunate real life hardships many communities face every day. So, how did you personally deal with the darkness during and after working on the novel?
Yeah, so I want to address what you said here. So in the book, I had to walk a fine line. I feel as a fiction writer, I have a duty, to present my community reasonably accurately,
Mhm.
but on the other hand, I didn't want this to be just all darkness or what sometimes is called poverty porn.
Right.
So Native Americans, we are unfortunately the most economically challenged people in America. And my people, very much so. Pine Ridge and Rosebud were the two poorest counties in all of America.
Yeah,
And the
it's
poverty there and the
ugh,
economic challenges are unbelievable. Our healthcare, I mean, it could go on and on. So, and we do have a problem with crime there and such. And so I felt that I had to portray some of that because I didn't want to sugarcoat this. On the other hand, I made a real effort to bring in the positive parts of our culture and reservation there, which a lot of people
right.
leave out. I brought in the joy, the humor, the traditions, the people. So, yes,
Right.
do we have economic challenges? We do. But we also have joy, resilience, or what some people have called this interesting word, survivance. Natives are
Mhm.
survivors, and there's this concept of survivance. We will survive things. Anything you throw at us, we survive, and we will prevail. So there was some darkness for me exploring a lot of these things, absolutely. But I tried to counter that by really highlighting the wonderful things that are happening on the Rosebud Reservation and elsewhere.
Right. And there is so much joy. There is, and the importance of family, whether it be by blood, because, essentially, all of the people are by blood, but, the sense of family and the need to, really, really keep the family unit together is, I mean, uh, it's so heartfelt and really, really, I just cherish all of the characters because it's who we want to be. I mean, it's who we should be is community and
Hmm,
giving and caring and yeah, and hope. So,
agreed.
so you were very kind to provide a blurb for my redemption thriller. Woo-hoo! Right there on the front cover. Look at that, so pretty. Um, uh, the doors are opening more and more to Native authors. Um, I mean, it's been incremental, and yes, we have been picked up. Um, kind of, but there needs to be more. Especially I think, just speaking for myself on the editorial boards and within the publishing companies, not just to put a check mark on, oh, we have our native author now. That's all we need. It's and there are publishers who are very kind. I'm with Thomas and Mercer, and I mean they have spoiled me, you know, properly. But have you personally have seen more opportunities come to you from being published?
Yes, I have. And let me address this sort of from a big picture perspective. First of all, listeners, viewers, check out Deborah's book. I did provide endorsement of it and I loved it. And so folks, if you
Thank you.
haven't had a chance to read it, do yourselves a favor. You're going to love it just as much as I did. So
I
it was my
appreciate
pleasure
that.
and honor to provide those words for you. Um, Let me tell you a little bit about what's happened in the 4 years since Winter Counts came out. So I wrote my critical thesis in my Master of Fine Arts program on Native American crime fiction artistically. And through that, I did a study of it. And what I found is that what we call the big five publishers, the five largest traditional New York publishers, had not published a Native American crime book, crime novel, in about 30 years. Now, there had been lots of non-Native authors, Tony Hillerman and others, that had published, but Native
Right.
Americans, for whatever reason, had been shut out of the big five until Winter
Right.
Counts. And so I was quite nervous. And of course, my book came out in the first wave of the pandemic. Every bookstore in the country was closed. So I
Oh,
did what I could. I rolled up my sleeves. I did literally hundreds of appearances, interviews, book clubs, you name it. And the book did become a national bestseller. And as you so kindly noted, it won 12 awards and was nominated for 20. Um,
yeah.
but and all that was great. I mean, sure, I was flattered, but the really good news is since Winter Counts came out, I think the publishers, both because of my book and others, Tommy Orange's book and others, they've seen that people will buy Native American books. And so lots and lots of folks are getting published in genre fiction that are indigenous. My friend Ramona Emerson, I gave her a blurb for her wonderful book, Shutter. I'm aware of at least a dozen Native crime writers now that are really able to get into the system in a way that they weren't before. And I'm absolutely thrilled about that. And I'm doing what I can in general. I don't talk about this a lot. I'm happy to talk about my novel, but I feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about what I'm doing to help the Native writing community. And there are lots of things here that I work with many, many Native writers. I've been a mentor for Native writers for PEN America, other places, AWP. I do that. I work informally with a lot of emerging Native writers. But I have something happening now. I am the series editor of Native Noir, which is a series of the University of New Mexico Press. Now I'm holding up in the camera our first release, which is The Indians Won by the author Martin Cruz Smith. Now, those of you who are listening, you can't see the cover, but what I'm doing is our series Native Edge is devoted to publishing Native American fiction, nonfiction, and hybrid work, stuff that may not make it in the commercial marketplace. It's a little more experimental, like maybe a little too edgy. And this was a reissue of a book that had been out of print for 30 years. It's getting fantastic reviews. It's the first ever Native American alternative history. I wrote a foreword for it. We have 2 other releases that came out. We're looking at others. So I'm working quite literally on the front lines to get Native American authors published. And so that's really, one of the great benefits of having Winter Counts be such a success is that it gave me the visibility to go out there and really try to help this community. I have a collection, an anthology called Native Noir of mainly non-crime writers who are trying their hand at writing a Native American crime short story. And that will be coming out from Akashic Books in 2025. And I'm really thrilled about that. So it's a collection of short stories by Native authors who are, again, not really crime fiction, with a few exceptions, specialists, but they're trying their hand at Native-themed crime stories. So there's lots of good stuff happening. So I'll stop there.
Okay. And the last question, will there be more Virgil?
Oh, yes, indeed. I am so thrilled. I get so many emails and questions from my readers. The next novel is entitled Wisdom Corner, and it will be coming out from Echo HarperCollins. We don't have a release date yet, but I promise you it's coming. It's the sequel. It takes place about a year after the events of Winter Counts conclude, and all of the same characters are back along with some really cool new ones, and I'm having a lot of fun writing it. So Wisdom Corner, it's coming, people. I promise you. I know everybody's like eager and anxious, but I'm doing my best here. I have a day job. I teach creative writing and Native American literature. I'm in New York City now teaching, and I've got kids entering college and all that. So I've been working as hard as I can, but I'm so honored that my readers have reached out to me and said, Dave, please, we want the next book.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm one of them. You are doing so much good out there, and we appreciate you so much. Everybody, Winter Counts, you've got to read this. This is absolutely crucial literature. Whether you read crime fiction or only nonfiction, this is for you. Thank you, David. I appreciate this so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.